right, y'all, we're looking into week 5. Next game on our list is Georgia and Alabama. This is just a minuscule part of the notes and things in my brain about this game. I'm going to try to make it short, all right? But this is not a short covered game, okay? This is give you all the details so you can make the decision if you want to bet. And if you don't, then maybe just see if I'm right. So one of the things I'm going to start with, which isn't normal and it's very small, but penalties. So one of the things that I noticed was Alabama, they really, they've gotten a couple of too many men on the field penalties or illegal substitution, mainly too many men on the field because they don't get their linemen off of the field fast enough. Those linemen are just waltzing off the field. I don't know what they're doing. Nick Saban would have a heart attack and make them run behind the bus all the way home. However, we're here with DeBoer, and he seemed to not care. Maybe he cared. Maybe I just didn't see it on TV. But I hope that he worked on this because Kirby is a lot smarter, no pun intended, than I am about football. And if I saw it, I know he saw it. And I think that he's going to try to take advantage of it. I think he might play a little faster and try to get those linemen wore out and try to get those penalties and try to make them make mistakes. Okay, so on to where you probably thought that I would start, which is the quarterbacks. So Gunner and Ty, on paper and in stats, they seem very similar, okay? But what I need you to know is that Kirby kept the ball on the ground a lot except for against UT. Okay, so whenever you look at those stats, Ty has 5 more touchdowns than Gunner does. I want you to realize that Kirby, I think, very intentionally kept some of those long balls and some of those pass plays under radar. I could be wrong. He might not trust Gunner the way that I think that he does, but it's just something that I noticed, that they seem very similar on paper. However, both of these quarterbacks are making strides each and every week. Gunner has stayed in the pocket better and taken hits better. Ty increasingly gets better every single week. So this might be a battle of the quarterbacks. We'll see. We'll see. So one last thing I want you to know about the quarterbacks is they do have a similar completion rating, okay? That's just something that I figured I'd throw in there since I told you that some of the stats are off. I still think that they are, but the completion rating is very similar. So when Georgia was playing Tennessee, I saw some really good, and I went back and watched it as a critic to Georgia and not a Tennessee fan because I'm a Tennessee fan. So whenever I went back and watched it, there was some beautiful offensive play draw-ups against Tennessee. Tennessee's secondary struggles to begin with. I think that Alabama's secondary might keep up a little bit better than Tennessee did with Georgia, but we will see. There's not really a specific stat that tells me this, but by watching the games, something that I just think that might happen is I think that Georgia's defensive line will have an easier time penetrating Alabama's offensive line to put pressure on Ty than vice versa. However, I will say that if Alabama can get plenty of pressure on Gunner, he does have or has had and is getting better about it, but has had a problem staying in the pocket. He wants to give a read, and then once he feels that pressure, instead of getting the ball out, he tries to make a play on his legs, and sometimes he makes great plays on his legs. But it doesn't always work, especially in the SEC and especially against Alabama, and an Alabama defense at that. So I would look for that to be maybe a coin flip of what's going to happen there and who's going to get the most pressure on these quarterbacks that perform really well sometimes, and then so far in the season sometimes you see that inkling of, oh, what was that? So I think we might see that happening, and it could go either way, but from what I've seen in the games, I think that Georgia's going to have a little bit easier of a time putting pressure on Ty than vice versa. So also something that I've not seen from either of these teams is, or a lot of, like you normally would from these teams, is big special team plays. And these teams are usually really good at like getting a ball pinned way back or just making any big special team play, right? I think that both of these teams are going to be working on that this week because they want every point they can and every opportunity and advantage that they can get against each other, which happens all the time. But in this game in particular, I think this week those special teams might be working on something to give them that little bit of an edge. And one of the last things that I want to say, and it really has nothing to do with like how it's going to affect the entire game, but if I was DeBoer, one thing that I would not try to do is that reverse flea flicker that he put on Wisconsin and gained like a whole 5 yards, where he gained 5 yards against Wisconsin. Ty's going to be sacked 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage if he tries that again. Would not do that against Georgia. That, I don't see that going well. I know he don't listen to me, but if one of y'all might want to send that to him, he should. All right, so the part that y'all have been waiting for. This game comes on Saturday at 6:30 Central on ABC. First, I would just like to give my condolences to Georgia fans for having to listen to this game on ABC and listen to the announcers talk about how wonderful Bama is, even if you're beating them. I know that feeling. But so the spread is 2.5 Georgia. Georgia is at home. I want to tell you that this is a pretty good bet, right? I think that Georgia covers this. However, because there's always a freaking however whenever it comes to this. Alabama always plays Georgia different. They just do. So everything that I watch, the entire 7 hours that I watch, could absolutely be zero benefit to you. And I could be 100% wrong because they always play Georgia different. But if you're looking at the facts of the game, you're looking at the plays, and you're looking at what's happened this year, Georgia should finally take this game at home and should cover the spread. The over-under 52.5. Here's a problem with these early season over-unders. We don't know. This could be a shootout between quarterbacks, or it could be a defensive nightmare for both teams. And they don't get anywhere. Once again, on the over-under, I wouldn't touch it. Realistically, this is 21.5 points, something like that, 26.5 points. Each. So you have to, if you want to take the over on that, you have to make sure that they're going to cover that. And I don't know that each team will cover that. You have to say that one team's going to be like 30 and one team's going to be 25, which absolutely could happen. 100% could happen. But I think that's a dangerous game to play with these two. That is all my thoughts. It was long thoughts, a lot of thoughts. If you stayed this long, thank you so much. I love you so much. Jesus loves you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.